were down 8-0. And I said to the boys, we have to be like this grey armband. We have to be connected. The cuck's going to come. It's the final. These guys are coming for you. They're bigger than us. The guy was kicking in the oak said, grey armband, grey armband. Stay together, stay together. And we won. I mean, yes. I mean, literally, I'm not crying. Okay, check, please.
Welcome to Winning the Away Game. If you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe to the channel and check out the wider Lekker network at lekkernetwork.com. Today, we are joined by Jason Zehmke, a mere college boy from Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape, who has spent more than 2 decades building life in Charlotte, North Carolina. At Wells Fargo, Jason works on AR risk and model governance. Away from the bank, he founded and led the Charlotte Cardinals, a youth rugby nonprofit built around culture, scholarships, service, and in 2024 and this past weekend won a national championship. So today we want to talk about leaving home, building trust, and why rugby's best lessons often happen off the field. Jason, welcome to Winning the Away Game.
Good morning, folks. Thank you so much for having me. What a fantastic opportunity.
Jason, welcome. It's great to have you. Justinas, how's it? I know it's early in the morning for both of you. Jason, I'm so excited for today. It's not only rugby. It's not only South Africa. It's starting anew, starting over, and conquering. I think that's the big thing that stands out for me when I look at the research we've made from you. We have a little tradition on the podcast. We like to start with your favorite Springbok memory, but you're not allowed to say Jelstransky 1995.
I think because everybody says that, right? I think winning all the World Cups had been pretty spectacular. I was lucky enough to be in Paris for the final, but it was amazing. I was sitting next to 2 French guys. They didn't want to sell their tickets. Once they got over the anger of not being in the final, they started buying me a lot of beer, which was fantastic. But they were great. But I think that the memory that I really sticks out is the 98 August test against New Zealand. And I think we came back from in the
Durbs.
20s. Yeah, Durbs, that's right. And I think we came back in about 15 minutes. You know, there was no end in the box. And Dalton's try, the pushover.
Yes.
That still sort of sits with me, and just that pure enjoyment. And I think any comeback win is pretty special. And we had one this weekend, by the way. So yeah, that is definitely the number one for me.
Oh, awesome, man.
Jason, let's get right into the thick stuff. So a boy from Uitenhage, going all the way, known as one of the classiest places in South Africa, to being a director at one of the biggest banks in America. Take us a little bit through your early days. What was growing up in Uitenhage like?
Wonderful. I mean, it's a small enough town, but it's not. I mean, it's big enough if anybody's been there. But I grew up. One thing about a small town, especially in the 80s, growing up, you've got to find things to do. You know, some of them you'd probably be jailed for nowadays. But you had your mates and your close mates. And I went to Muir College High School and junior school. Played every sport there was, because there wasn't social media. There wasn't anything else to do. So your buddies, I just remember riding bikes through the suburbs, going to the cricket nets to play cricket, touch rugby. You know, you just found things to do constantly. But I wouldn't change anything. My fondest memories in the rugby scene was playing for Muir first team, and the crowd coming out and watching and playing against Daniel Pienaar and Brandwag and Dispatch High School and Grey High School was our big rivalry back then. And Muir was a small school. I think I had about 50 kids in my matric year, so it wasn't this massive school. But we always used to punch above our sort of weight class. You know, of course, the legendary Garth Wright was from Muir. I actually was able to play an old boys game. My last game ever, and we can get to that, was playing for the old boys against the Springbok legends, which was pretty spectacular. But yeah, it was amazing. You know, just finding things to do, being creative, being with your buddies, pretty special, you know, and playing every single sport. I mean, I think I tried water polo once. I don't know why, but I tried it, you know, but it was great. Fantastic.
I'm actually amazed. I grew up in Pretoria in the 80s and very Afrikaans community. So I was very ignorant to all of these amazing schools in the Eastern Cape that's like 150 years old. And like even yesterday, I didn't even know much about Muirfield College until I read your bio. And then I went and did some research. It's just absolutely insane. The school and the infrastructure and everything that's in the Eastern Cape.
Amazing schools. I mean, Muir is the oldest school. I think it's now officially. I think we used to fight with Wynberg, which is the oldest school in the South Africa, and it is Muir College. And we had a 250 celebration about 2 years ago, and that's where we played this old boys game. But think about Grey High School, think about Frangsby, think about Graham. Yeah. You've got St Andrews. I mean, all these fantastic schools. Yeah. So you don't really need to leave the Eastern Cape to play against top, quality schools. But we obviously did our tours to Cape Town and Joburg and Durbs, But a lot of those guys that I played against ended up with me at UPE when I was studying there. And then we played together. And I think that's very special. Like, I don't know if we take that for granted in South Africa, but the fact that you were, enemies in high school playing against each other, and then you get to college or university and you're teammates. I mean, you're brothers, and something that we brought back here, which is pretty cool. But yes, I mean, you're right, Justinus. Incredible schools.
These we often reference it on our pod, but there's a lovely podcast called "The History of South Africa" by Des Latham, and he dedicates 2 episodes about first of all, Sir George Grey, that came with the British settlers, to install some discipline in the Wild West that was South Africa back then, and establish schools in the British principle. But then we discover all the St Andrews and the Muir College and the Graham and Queens. It's absolutely incredible, the history. I want us to stop there a little bit because those schools are not what they should be today. And I don't know how close you move, to the alumni network over there, etc. What is happening there? Why are we missing? Talents, the upbuild of that schools? Just the whole infrastructure around those schools.
I think the quick answer, and I've seen it here in America, is the premium put on rugby as a sport, right? And I see it here in America with American football. The amount of kids that move between schools, talented kids being picked up by different schools, right? There was no such thing. So Garth Wright went to Muir College. But today, Garth Wright would not be at Muir College. There's a premium for not only the kids, but the parents and coaches and schools to get the best talent to their schools. And they offer bursaries and full ride scholarships. And some of these schools just can't compete with that dollar or that rand, right, amount. And it's sad. And I don't think it's going to change unless there's some sort of limit placed on what you can do, right? But it's not like I want to say, well, that's America. I mean, I think I did see an article recently in South Africa, one of the publications about that, right? About this massive talent drain from these historically fantastic schools that just can't compete with some of these just wealthier schools. They just can't. And I want to blame South Africa for that maybe, but it's not. It's universal. I'm sure it might happen flipping France, If you see a talented kid at a young age, you bring him over, So I think a lot of schools, they just don't have that rand. They just don't have the money to keep these kids. Those kids are going to go to these better schools, so you lose this talent. And then, unfortunately or fortunately, you're not really in the news in South Africa for being the top spelling bee school. You're in the news for being a really good rugby program, So that goes hand in hand with how much publicity you get, And I'm just saying it because I see it every day, football, basketball, baseball. It happens here.
So I think that's a very interesting dilemma, right? Because rugby, for the talented kid, it provides a little bit of that social mobility. And you have these basically 3 tiers of schools. So yes, you have the top tier, which is the schools with a big budget that try and compete for the top 5 positions in the country. Then you have all of these schools that is in that second tier. But then you also have this tier of quintile 1 to 3 schools, of which there are so many in the Eastern Cape, that that can't even have a proper rugby season because they have no infrastructure, no league, and no things to go with it. So it's actually insane, the opportunity and the potential in South Africa, if we can really figure out how to build an even better system. Because I think we already have the best schoolboy system in the world. I mean, there's nobody that really can compete with us on the talent and width and depth of schoolboys. But we're still only scratching the surface.
Well, I don't think we have to think too hard about it. I just think there's a bunch of South African headmasters or administrators that probably need to get together and say, put egos aside, and for the better of rugby, South Africa is still at the top of the pyramid. How do we make sure that everybody gets their just desserts is not really the word, but their spot in the sunshine, and there's equity across the board, that everybody gets noticed. Now, I was able to watch Muir against Andrew Robbie last night, and that's not a tier 1 game, but they were on TV, right? I was able to find them, and that needs to happen across the board. So the kids that are staying are noticed. But also, kids, I have this conversation a lot with coaches. Kids are different. This isn't the kids from the 80s, right? These are kids that work or spend a lot of time on social media. So the reward is telling their friends, look at me, right? And I've had this conversation with my coaches. We've got like 45 coaches at the Cardinals. I said, guys, this just is the way it is. Right.
Yeah.
Whether we're not psychologists, but I'm telling you now, a kid wants to tell his buddy that he's on TV tomorrow at 1:00. Right.
Yeah.
So I just think it's as simple as making sure that as a community of rugby, right, everybody gets a fair share, and being on TV, being on social media. Right. That's great. Gray's playing Paul boys or whatever. Great. But Andrew Robbie's playing Muir as well. And it's at this time. And it's like, okay. So the kid at Muir might go, geez, I don't really want to go to Bloemfontein. I'm okay to stay here. I get seen and I get noticed, and I'm okay with that.
That's a very interesting point you're making, Jason. I've never thought about it like that, but it's you hitting the nail on the head. And SuperSport schools, they're doing amazing work. Worth getting it out there. We're seeing it just now with me and Justinas. We're both very passionate about the talent pool in the Eastern Cape, and we're seeing the exposition they get. So you're a little bit involved in coaching. So how do you motivate these youngsters then?
Donuts. We have a lot of donuts at practice. That has been the secret. So the Cardinals have only been around for 5 years, right? As we're a very young club, we broke away from another club in Charlotte. There were just too many kids playing in this winter league. But you must remember, it's very hard for a South African to understand, and it took me a while too. These kids do not grow up playing rugby, right? They don't watch it. They don't even think about it. It's not even part of their sort of psyche. They know that they would, if they want to be sports stars, they've got to play football, baseball, basketball, right? That's it, right? There are some other sports.
Maybe hockey if you're in Canada.
Yeah, maybe hockey up north if you want to be cold. Ice hockey's a big deal. But you've essentially, Flip and Justinas, you've essentially got to take a kid that's maybe heard of the word rugby and say, hey, come try rugby, right? Now think about that. Now think about you growing up in South Africa, you want to be a Bok. Nothing else matters, right? Now you get to a point in your high school career or middle school career where you go, I'm okay, but I'm not Bok level, right? But I still love rugby. And then someone taps you on the shoulder and goes, hey, bud, why don't you come play lacrosse? And you go, what the heck's lacrosse? You go, it's I'm sure you've heard. I say, I've heard of it. Is there a stick involved? Is it in the water? What are we doing? So then you must think, now what's going to make you give up? I mean, you love rugby, right? I'm not saying give up rugby, but now go focus on lacrosse. So that's exactly what we have to do in America with rugby, right? And it is constant. Now, the good news is there's enough expats here that kids grow up watching rugby. So we have a bit of that. But so what we've had to do with rugby is make it fun. Like I've got the problem, where there's a kid, the same one kid's being told, you want to try lacrosse or you want to try rugby, right? So we promote it as it's not going to take you away from football, because kids love football and they should. The way we have Saturday rugby, they have Friday night football here at high school. It's amazing, right? It's huge. There's music, it's fireworks. So I say, listen, come play rugby in the winter and spring. It's going to help you develop as a football player, right? and we're going to have a blast doing it. Like we're going to split you into houses, and we're going to have donuts, and we're going to bring up slushies, and we're going to not just do drill and fitness, and then, by the way, we're going to travel and we're going to go to the national championship if you're good enough. So kids go, okay, I'll give that a go, right? But you've got to sell something different to just like more drills, more the same. You've got to, and then they come, and you must remember that one kid that you brought over has potential to bring another 3 or 4 or 5 of his buddies that have never played rugby. Or actually something else, that one kid has 2 parents that now tell 3 or 4 or 5 other parents about this amazing Cardinals and this great rugby community, and geez, they have fun at practice and they eat a lot of donuts, or maybe the coaches do. And then they go try it, and it's very short, but they love it. Very, very, very seldom have I seen kids leave it for good. But what I have noticed recently is a lot of kids giving up football for rugby, just to play rugby.
And what drives that decision? How do they get to that point?
It's 2 things, Jacinus. It's in football, there's 11 players on the field, right? A lot of the schools, and this is a little bit sad, in America, you either make the A side or you don't play. If you're a matric kid, if you're either in the A side or you don't play, right? So your dream of playing football, with rugby, of course, we have 5 high school boys teams at the Cardinals. So everybody's playing. It's the same in schools in South Africa, right? So everybody's playing constantly. And then the other thing is, if you're not the top player, you don't play. So in other words, you go to, now my kid is going to be out of school here. They have practice twice a day, and they start like in March, and they only start playing in September. So just think about that, right? How long that period is of training. Those same kids that don't see the field are training just as much for no reward, none, other than just to run out on a Friday night and stand on the sideline. But these kids are not stupid, right? They realize, like, I'm not playing. People know that I'm not playing, and then we go, well, rugby, I'm constantly playing, right? I'm constantly making memories. I'm constantly on social media because we put their names up there and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what's driving it. The fact that these kids are playing a sport, and it's not just rugby. I love giving rugby credit because this is a rugby show. This was called, Justinus is a Flips lacrosse chat. We'll be talking about how it benefits lacrosse. But the same with lacrosse. These kids are just going, I want to play. And I say this to my parents every single preseason Zoom, right? I say, we as a generation, I maintain to this day, have done a really poor job of making memories for these kids. When we played, I honestly, listen, I'm from PE, and I'm sure I lost a lot more games than I won. All right. So there's the one EP joke I'm going to make. Okay. But somehow it was still the most amazing sport in the world, right? It was still this incredible rugby. And I honestly can't remember if I won or lost. So, yeah. But I remember being with my buddies. I remember playing, and I remember all of it afterwards and getting your juice box and all that. Now, football's just win. Now it's just win that. And I said, like, to my parents, excuse my French, Flip, we've done a piss poor job of just having kids create memories and play sport. And that's what we try to do with rugby at the Cardinals. And that's why we're one of the biggest rugby clubs in America in a very short amount of time, because all the teams, all the kids get their time on video, on film, on camera, on photos, and then they get posted to social media and all that stuff. We don't even call our teams ABC. We give them colors, red, blue, gold. And it's very simple. So everybody asks, why do you use colors? I said, are you woke or what? I was like, if I'm a kid that's playing in the C team, I'm not going to post that I'm in the C team and promote the Cardinals or rugby. But if I say gold, they're going to use that. They go, I'm in the gold team, and they're going to promote it, and they're going to show that they're playing rugby, and that's marketing. So, no one knows. They might think the gold team, well, that's obviously the A team. I'm like, yes, it is. So yeah, I'm a little bit. I don't want to be preachy about it, but those are the things that you've got to keep considering with kids.
Well, Jason, can I call you Ted from now on? Because you remind me so much of Ted Lasso.
Do I get paid the same amount? Because rugby, you get a big zero in America. You just do it for the love of the sport.
It's very much for the love of the game. Jason, just get a little bit of pause from the rugby. So, Uitenhage, UPE. And then before we started recording, he told us a little bit of story. You ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina. How did that happen?
So my rugby career was Muir College, UPE. I played a little bit for EP. I went over to Australia. I played EP under 21, went to Australia, played in Brisbane, the Brisbane Brothers for a year, which was amazing experience. Came back, finished my law degree. And then I was playing for Dispatch for my final year, and I was actually on my way to Ireland. I was going to go do a couple more years at Trinity College in Dublin and play rugby for them. And then a good friend of mine that was there said to me, "Are you going to Ireland?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just came back from America, and I was playing for this team in Charlotte." Listen, I'd never heard of Charlotte, North Carolina. I think I'd heard of the Hornets because they had that NBA show growing up in South Africa, and I remember going. I was always just in love with America. I mean, growing up, all the movies were American, Beverly Hills Cop, you name it. We watched it, right? So I was like, that might be awesome. Let's go for 6 months, maybe a year, take a gap year and just go to Charlotte. Let's just go see what happens, right? And it was just from this one conversation. I remember it so clear. It was at the Dispatch practice, right after the practice. He had spent a year here. And I don't know why. I honestly, to this day, don't even know why he was here. He might have just been traveling and found this club and played a little bit of rugby on the side. So I made contact with the president coach, and he pulled me over. I came over for what was going to be 6 months. And then it ended up being a year. I met my wife, now ex-wife, and stayed, and that's 26 years ago. And thank goodness I came in 2000 so I could do math really easy. 2000. But yeah, 26 years I've been in Charlotte, and it was just from a guy saying, "Why don't you go try Charlotte?" I was like, "Sure, let's go try Charlotte."
And you knew nothing?
Nothing. I didn't even, the three guys in the team picked me up at the airport, did not know a single guy. I didn't even know their face. It was honestly through email in 99 into 2000. But I think with rugby, and everybody can attest to this, you've instantly got brothers. You've got a support system instantly. I did sleep on the guy's couch the first night, and it just grew. And eventually I got into an apartment. After 6 months or so, I decided I wanted to stay, and I got an H-1B work visa. I was doing legal contracts for a firm through the rugby club. Again, you've got the support network. And then I remember playing, and my center partner was a day trader, not a day trader, just a trader at Bank of America. And he said, "If you want to stay in Charlotte, you need to get into the banks, And with the law degree, so once I got married, I was legal to work. So I moved my H-1B and went to Bank of America, worked there for 16 years, and then eventually got to Wells Fargo, where I am now. That's the journey. I think, I've gone back to Muir and had some chats with some of the boys and teachers. You just got to be open. First of all, you've got to be resilient. You've got to be able to back yourself, because the cut's going to hit the fan. There's no way around it. Like you don't even remotely dodge it. And homesickness is a small thing, especially in Australia, it's choosing between, do I want to eat tonight or do I need to buy some soap so I can bath? Like you didn't have money all the time, but you've got to be resilient and bounce back. But then you really just got to back yourself and your support structure and then go with it. There was, Justina, there was nothing about this path that I mapped out. It was like, that they got that funny saying, "Hold my beer." I was like, "Okay, hold my beer. Let's do it,
go
man.
to Charlotte.
Let's go to Charlotte. We'll see what happens." The worst. You do have a support net. Your safety net is, I can go back to South Africa, play rugby, and be a lawyer. Okay.
Yeah. Well, hold my beer. You didn't do too bad.
Yeah.
But what's amazing to me is that at the same time, being open to anything that can happen and taking the leap and saying, "Okay, I've heard about this Charlotte, North Carolina. I can have this opportunity to go play rugby." And you blink an eye and it's 26 years later.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. At which point did you wake up and say, "Okay, no, I think I want to try and stay for a long time"? How long did that take you?
It might have taken 6 months. I just fell in love with America, where you honestly can achieve anything you want if you work hard, right? And then honestly making these great friends. They were so amazing, these rugby guys. Being in a South African in America playing rugby in early 2000s was a big deal, right? They had just started the Super League, which was the closest thing they had to the Currie Cup then. It was the top players you played against, Eagles and all that. So they really appreciated you being there, right? But I think very early on that I think, I'm going to make a go of this, right? And then I eventually got married, had my son, and then it was, listen, I'm definitely staying, But there was never, I don't really ever think that I said, I want to go home. I knew that I could if I wanted to, but there was like I said, honestly, it was a bit odd if I look at it now. I'm going to turn 50 next month. Whew. But I think I never ever mapped out a day ahead of me at all. It was whatever hits the fan, I'm in. Let's see if we can handle it.
And what was the biggest obstacle? What, like looking back over the last 26 years, what turned out to be the biggest unexpected obstacle that you had to overcome?
I think like making sure you had the right jobs, because in the first 6 months I was just a visitor. I had enough money just to get through. And then eventually you had an H-1B visa, which was allowing me to do contracts for a company it was just two guys. It was a business. But making sure that I could get the right job. But once I was legal to work anywhere and got into the bank, it was pretty, the word easy is not the word easy, but it was easier to move on, right? The biggest obstacle for a South African, you get homesick. You do miss, I know it's such a cliche, you miss the catering, the braais, the rugby, the concert. Guys, when I used to watch rugby in the early 2000s, it was on a cricket website from India. I think I must have got about 600 viruses during the first half alone on my computer. But you couldn't find rugby, right? So the little things like that, right? I went through a few laptops in my early days in America, right?
It doesn't bode well that you worked for Bank of America then, but we won't say anything.
But then luckily, things started improving. You started getting those games, and there was, and then more and more South African. Not that I had a couple of South Africans through the rugby club, but I tell you, Justin and Flip, if you're around a rugby club, or rugby buds or boys or community,
South Africans just show up. Yeah.
It's just pretty easy, like you're all on the same page. They get it, and they're like, "Hey, come over to my house tomorrow, have dinner." So it was actually pretty lucky with that support system. That is rugby.
And that's a great point, Jason, because what we're trying on Winning the Away Game podcast is actually, tell listeners that are either overseas and struggling or thinking about going overseas, how we're doing it. It's like, how do you build a network? How do you build yourself up? The basic things that we do at home, how do you replicate it? So often it's through a rugby club, isn't it? Or through connecting through other South Africans. It's not always easy. Sometimes you connect with other South Africans and you just don't like each other,
Yeah.
Yesterday we spoke to a guest and he started his own bolt-on company, So
Yeah.
how would you say that your South Africanness? How did that play into your hand?
Well, by the way, you're spot on. Like being able to go into a club and have instant friends was huge. The South African, I think, I think about it now, just the love for people and the love for rugby is what is really, if I really want to be honest with the success of the Cardinals and just rugby in general, it's this unbridled love that I as a South African have for the sport, right? Kids are not stupid. Kids, they will see whether you're authentic or not very quickly, right? But I honestly, I grew up, my dad played for EP, and then he was the manager of EP in the late 90s with Chris Wiley when they went to the Super 10 and all that stuff. So I spent hours on the side of EP practices and kicking the ball to Francois Langenberg and Springboks, you name it, right? When they would go away to an away game, I would draw because it was EP guys. So you weren't on TV. We had to go to the radio. So I had to go and draw the field and where they were on the field, where they were scoring. So I just loved the sport, and I saw what it did for me as a person, and then I saw what it could do for so many different people. So I really wanted that piece of the South African rugby way, and I wanted these Americans to experience, but not the American way of rugby, which is win at all costs. I feel like it's also going a little bit that way in South Africa to a certain extent. But that piece of South Africa, just the pure enjoyment for the sport and what it could do for kids. I tell you, Flip, the most important thing is getting I think the driving force between why I might coach one more season. I always tell my wife last season. But anyway, why I might do one season is because I get these notes from parents saying, my kid, he was a loner, or my kid was bullied, or my kid didn't have anybody to sit with at lunch. Then he found rugby and he found this amazing sport, and now he has instant friends and he's got confidence and has been a changer. You're playing the toughest sport in the world. I don't care what these football guys see. If any of my American buddies are watching, listen, we can have this discussion all day long. There's no helmet here, mate. But yes, that has been, and that's what I wanted to show a lot of these kids. And I was, some people do it through donations. Some people do it through going and reading to these kids or taking these kids out. I've just been able to do it from rugby. This sport can change your life. And there's kids that we go to the national championships that have never been on an airplane, they didn't think they were going to go to college. Now colleges, because you're in the top team in America, colleges want to speak to you. They want you to come to their university and play rugby.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It happens. It's your Ted Lasso, Justinus.
That you reminded me of a thing that old Boet Erasmus saying. You stand there next to the stadium at Boet Erasmus. It's where I had my first load shedding experience. Right in the middle of the first half, everything just went black, and we had to literally wait. We waited 40 minutes, and then we could play again.
I've played many times on the field, and then the train goes. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. So Jason, it's not always sunshine and roses. You mentioned that you went through a little bit of a divorce as well.
Yeah, it didn't work out. We were married a long time, 11 years, had my son with my ex-wife. We're just different people, we obviously get on well now still. My son Luke is a junior, a very good rugby player. He wears a South African scrum cap when he plays, but he played for the USA under 18. Awesome. And I had to get him a new scrum cap because I'd explained to him, you can't wear a South African scrum cap wearing an American rugby jersey, right? And that was actually a real discussion, by the way.
And it was hard for him to understand.
It was like, it's like his armor, right? He puts a South African scrum cap on. It's like, hey guys. Although let's not remind him that he was born in Charlotte. Okay, whatever. But it was tough. I think, getting through that, then I met Judith, my wife now, and she has been amazing. I think the Cardinals exist, or I even had the idea with a bunch of friends to do it because she was so supportive. We weren't having a good time at the other club. There was something a little bit off with the culture to begin with, but they've fixed it since, and we are fantastic partners with them. It's been great, but there were also so many kids playing rugby in the winter. So Charlotte's lucky to have like a winter school season where you play for your school. And then in the spring, you go and play for a club. But there's only so many kids a club can actually hold, right? So that's why we started it. I think the toughest thing that happened through all that time was losing my dad to cancer. He was in South Africa. I actually brought him up in a speech before the game or before the final. And I think I looked at my armband, and I wear a grey armband, and it's just a reminder of my dad. And it's such an amazing, he was my hero, a rugby hero. I mean, I was able to watch him play a little bit. I remember the only incident I remember was he charged down a kick and it hit him in the face and he was bleeding. That's all I remember. But he played for EP for many years and he managed them, like I said, but he died at 67, which is really young with cancer. And I think a lot of what I do with the Cardinals, geez, I'm not going to cry. Just as you cry first.
I'm already crying. What are you talking about?
No, I said it to the boys. I said, I looked down at my band, and I started crying straight away. And I actually said to my room, and I said to my son, because he was in the room, and I said, do you guys know why I wear this? And they were like, no. I said, this is a reminder of my dad, who was my hero, my rugby hero. And I think a lot of why I do this, why I coach rugby, it brings me close to my dad. There's something you do with your dad that you did, and rugby was just a massive thing. He was a big Sharks supporter. So when the Sharks would play or the Boks would play, I would phone him right after the game. And then the first thing he would say was, why were you worried? Especially when the Boks won or Sharks won. He's like, well, it's the Boks. You never know what you're going to get. It's the Sharks. And then you lose that. As soon as that line goes dead, you lose that. And I wanted to still be close to him. I think it manifested into coaching, and it manifested into giving back to these kids what he was able to give to me. And just don't cry, because I'm going to try not to cry either. But we were down.
No, you should
8-0.
Cry, baby.
No, yes. I'm almost 50. I'm not crying anymore. apparently behind the polls, we were down 8-0. And I said to the boys, in the speech, I said, listen, guys, we have to be like this grey armband. We have to be connected. It's the cuck's going to come. Like, it's the final. These guys are coming for you. They're bigger than us. It's just going to fly in all directions, but you've got to take cover in the trenches together. And you've got to be this grey armband just holding it all together. And apparently they were down 8-0. The guy was kicking and the Oak said, grey armband. Stay together. And we won. I mean, yes. Literally, I'm not crying. Okay, check, please. Can I get the bill? So anyway.
That's beautiful. And don't stress about it. Sharing that. And there's so many stories, often when you tell something like that, I reflect on my own career and stuff people said and stories people tell. And rugby is an emotional sport, We wear it, on our sleeves, and it's also a place that we can live it out. I think that's why so many people relate with it. Whether you can play or not, whether you're on the field or off the field, it's really a place that we can live our emotions. Where there's no, I used to say, there's no tax and no taxis. So we can just be ourselves.
No, it's huge.
And sorry to hear about your dad. And that's the thing for South Africans is you often, we all three of us live abroad. And you often live with that guilt feeling of, your folks that gave everything for you. Now you sit on this side, and you're doing wonderful work of living his legacy through coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Flip. I think you're right. You don't, when you leave, you don't think about stuff like that. It's not even it's not even a thought. The thing that happened was I went back to see my dad, introduced him to Judith we were engaged, and we played golf. And I think that was in March. In the end of April, early May, I was told to come back. I was like, what are you talking about? It just happened so quickly. And I had to come back and say goodbye to my dad, but it's not something you think about, and it is an extremely emotional sport. I think especially with kids. I think, Justinus, you asked a question earlier, like why are kids maybe moving away from football and some of the other sports? There's a lot of shouting in coaching and football because I've been around it. I've helped coach tackling and stuff. There's a very different way of coaching, and it might work for football. I don't know anything about football, so I can't tell you why it works for football. Where for me as a rugby coach, to get the best out of these kids, to get up and make that tackle, to work hard for their friend, to do all that, you've got to pull something out of them. You've got to get them to go to that other place. And it's something that Rassie said. I think he said, making it emotional only lasts 10 to 20 minutes, but you make it personal and it can last an entire game. So where the personal piece is, are you playing for your brothers? Were you playing for something more? Right. And we are able to get that because we're not the biggest side, but the contact is still the contact. Like, you got to be able to handle it, So yeah, it's a wonderfully emotional game. I love it for it.
So I wanna just draw a little line from your dad through to your son. And so when you see your son play, being born in America, playing with a South African scrum cap, what's the thing about your dad that you see in your son?
Yeah, haragat, is that still a word? Yeah, haragat. I love that word. I wouldn't know how to spell it. Listen, the Zehmke men are so stubborn, and my dad was no exception. My brother's Aaron, who played a little bit for Border too. He's still in PE. He's also bloody haragat, and I hope you watch this, Aaron. But anyway. First off, Justinus, I know my dad would be so proud, and I wish he was there just to see it. Not me. I don't need him to be proud of me. I know my dad's proud of me, no matter what. But just to see what Luke's doing, because they were very close. When he was a lightie, he was up until the age of 7. They played golf together. My memory of Luke walking with a burger and chips at Fish River Sun, and a monkey jumps down on the tree and scares the crap out of him. My dad's laughing, and the balls are flying and the tees, and they were so close. Just to see, and I think Luke does a lot of it for me, But he does a lot of it for Grampy Scooby, because they used to watch Scooby-Doo together all the time. When we're in moments where I know it's tough, I will say to him, just, look to Grampy, get some strength from him. And he does, and there's a lot of that in him. And he's a great kid. He's a very good rugby player. And that's tough for me to say, because I just sound like every bloody South African parent who thinks his kid's going to be a bok. But he is a good rugby player, and I think he might end up at going to Bath University or at one of these universities overseas to go play some rugby. I think it'd be good for him, But yeah, sheesh.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing.
We are literally you Jack, but I think we're speaking to a modern day Ted Lasso. What I enjoy the most,
what I feel for sure.
Yeah, what I enjoy the most, I know there's a little community somewhere in Charlotte that knows the word kak. That's gonna,
yeah. Listen, they make fun of me. They make fun of my accent, those boys, and it's amazing.
You can take the man out of Uitenhage, but not Uitenhage out of the man.
No ways. Forget about it.
So tell us a little bit, Jason. Give you a little bit of a breather. Your day-to-day at Wells Fargo. What do you do, first of all? And then the interesting, because you're obviously a very motivated man, very motivated person. How do you use these rugby instances, analogies in your day-to-day work?
So I'm in AI, artificial intelligence. And the one thing about AI, and it's been around a while, but it's everywhere now. I think there's a lot of cart before the horse type stuff where a lot of AI models are being built and there's not enough. No, I wouldn't say not enough, but the controls and the risk guidance and all the different gates that need to be in place are lagging, right? So we're building these models at a rapid rate, but do we have the right checks and balances in place? So that's where my team comes in. I work with a team that is responsible for, or was responsible for risk. I've actually just moved to another team now at Wells Fargo. But we were responsible for making sure that the controls and risks and all this analysis with regards to that model, if you flip, we're going to make or build the model and put it into production. And remember, this is a bank, right? So it gave anything from scanning checks to sending mail out to people, depending on how they use their money or how they spend their money, to various other efficiency tools like sorting emails. But anyway, we need to make sure that there's no cyber risk or data risk or anything that's going to trip the bank up down the road, or all these different things being monitored and looked at. So that's where my team comes in. The rugby thing is teamwork. It's funny in banking. I actually said this to a person the other day. I was like, I wonder if that manager ever played in a team, was ever part of a team sport, because it's amazing how team sport is so important to managing people. Like being able to get 5 or 6 or 7 different people in your team that have all different skills, doing or working towards the same goal, right? And that's what rugby is, all different shapes and sizes working towards the same thing. So I've been able to use rugby and getting the best out of the people in my team, right? But also bringing, I think, to a team, we're not saving the world yet. Well, maybe we are if it was Terminator, the movie, but it's not those type of AI models. We're not saving the world yet. We might be saving the bank, but let's lighten up, Francis, as they would say in the movie Stripes.
I just love that.
Yeah. It's rough. I actually showed the boys this weekend that quote from, but I live by that quote. Lighten up, Francis. And it's in the movie Stripes from the 80s, and this guy's going crazy. His name, call me killer or call me psycho. And if you do this, I'll kill you. And then the guy goes, lighten up, Francis. He calls him by the name that he doesn't want to be called it. He's like, guys, we're okay, man. Like it's okay. Breathe. That's something I have to bring to these kids. They come from these very competitive environments. That is football and life. Life is competitive for these kids. They are constantly seeing who's doing better than them in social media. It's in front of them 24/7. And sometimes I don't take for granted that you're with these kids about 6 to 8 hours without a phone, right? And you just get to say, guys, just exhale. We're going to be all right here, But Flip, It's been an amazing. I started in Bank of America doing products where they built new products for the bank. And I've always been responsible for making sure that from A to Z, we've checked everything, that nothing goes wrong, that everybody's happy, everybody's on the same page. And I've been able to do that with the Cardinals. We set it up like a corporation. There's a board, there's an operating committee, and we all do everything we do because remember, now you're working with kids. So there's different types of issues that might pop up. So you've got to make sure that you can't just wing it. You've got to have A to Z checked because these are kids. They don't live life across a straight line. Kids, as you know, just move like this at all times. So we got to make sure the checks and balances. So really, the banking's helped Cardinals and Cardinals have helped my job, or rugby has helped my job.
That's awesome. I've always wanted to ask this question to somebody in banking in the US because when I got to Canada in 2016, I had been in and around business for almost 17, 18 years, and I'd never ever had a personal or a business checkbook. And the first time I had to pay a supplier, and they said to me, I can send them a check. I said, what do you mean send you a check? Isn't it, what's your perception of the South African banking system versus what you found here in North America?
Yeah, it's the way to pay is pretty amazing, right? Like you go into and I haven't obviously spent a lot in time in South Africa. So the last time I wrote a check was for the national championship, which I send out of the Cardinals checkbook. But I think it's the only check I send all year. I've got like 500 checks. I use one a year, which is amazing. But what the speed of being able to pay and the different options you have, right? Like I'll go buy let's just say I go buy a rugby jacket, right, online. It gives you like 5 or 6 different options to pay, and you can choose any one of them, and any one of them is linked straight to your bank account. So it's instant pay, right? So that is pretty amazing. Although, to be honest with you, Justin, I sent some money to South Africa for some reason, for my uncle's birthday or something. And it was actually very easy to wire from my Bank of America account straight to South Africa. I think it was there within 2 days. So there's definitely an improvement about it. But America is all about speed. Americans just don't want to wait. I've been here 26 years. I also get upset if I'm waiting a bit longer for my KFC sandwich or burger. But because you get so used to everything being so smooth, you know. But yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. Are they ahead of European countries? You know, I couldn't answer that. I'm sure they're just right up there. But South Africa is catching up for sure with payment and check. I don't know if anybody uses checkbooks anymore in South Africa. I'm sure they do.
I would challenge you there. I actually think South Africa is leading most of these countries, just because we're intelligent people and we much smaller, obviously, much easier. Jason, multi-million-dollar question.
Ooh.
How do we make South Africa a country that works for everyone?
I think South Africa needs to all get behind a common purpose. You know, I think what drives a community or anything, whether it's micro or macro level, is that we're all trying to fight the same fight, right? That we have each other's backs. And I think you can take that from rugby, Flip. If we're all going in different directions, we aren't connected. And it's really the grey band. I mean, it's become a thing, but it has become a thing in our club. But if you're all connected around the same purpose, and it can't just be every 4 or 5 years when we play Rugby World Cup. Now everybody likes each other, right? Like it's superficial. It's great. I love it. But like, why don't we step back and go, why don't we all make this country the best country in the world? Okay. Where are our shortcomings? Where are our gaps? And how do we work to get that better? Are we all in this? Okay. So we all, I suppose if I was the president of South Africa, I'd say, we all want to make this the best country in the world, right? So we all benefit. Is that right? And who's going to say no, right? So everybody goes, yes. Okay. So cool. We all go buy. Cool. So now how do we do that, right? Let's put these committees in place. The first thing I would do as president is let's make sure we work across all party lines because it feels like we're all going in different directions. Let's find that common purpose. Like, what is the common purpose? Make South Africa great. Where do you guys struggle? Why do you hate this party? What are they doing wrong that really irritates you? And compromise, you know. We don't do enough of that. I feel like South Africa has unlimited potential, Flip. Like, it is such a beautiful, amazing country. I often think about coming back and once my kid goes overseas and finding a school and coaching and just living in South Africa for 5 years or so, and doing that. But we all have to get on the same page. And it's funny, it's not just like it's the same with anything you do in life, right? If we're all fighting in different directions, you're going to go, the boat goes nowhere, right? But if we were, okay, we're going to go this way, that country would just be phenomenal, right? That's what
And do you think we can use rugby to do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think but not just rugby. I think you've got to use other, but rugby is the number one unifier across race and color and everything in South Africa. Like I said, every 5 years, we're all on the same page, right? I think Rassie has been amazing for the country. If you think about the positive impact he's made, and it's not just Rassie. I mean, Rassie would probably be the first one to say, there's a village that does this. It's not just me, right? How do you use rugby? But think about rugby, Justinus. You're not successful if everybody's on the same page. You have different voices, right? But we all have a common purpose, make South Africa a great rugby country. Well, just take that conversation and flip the rugby to this country. Why does it have to be that hard? Too much Ted Lasso, maybe.
No, not enough. Bring on some more.
I'm just thinking, Jason, South Africa, it would be privileged to have you there. I think there's so many people can pull value from your values actually that you install. I think that's a good part.
Our campaign's slogan would be "Lighten up, Francis."
It'll lighten up, Francis. Yeah, well, I thought you would say if you were president, you would fire yourself. That's the first thing you would do.
Yeah,
and you actually reminded me of like a little bit of an epiphany I had back in 2010, and I'm pretty sure Justinus was there when the Bulls played. It was actually the semi-final, wasn't the final we played in Orlando.
Crusaders, yep. I was there.
We played Orlando down in Soweto. We were riding in with the bus. And I mean, all the way from Pretoria, it was just cars and it was just chaos and people. And then, Orlando Stadium's actually not that far in from the highway, but it was just packed and people buying at the locals in Soweto's houses, and it was Bulls fan with the horns hugging the other guy, and it's on his neck. And I was like, it's not often that before you play the Crusaders in semi-final, you think of something political. But I was just like, how do you screw this up? It's impossible.
Yeah, it is. And I think another piece of it is stop the negative chatter, right? We have those moments and we go into this cycle of pointing finger and what's wrong. Instead, if each person heard someone say that, hey, just stop. Let's be a part of the solution versus the problem, because just complaining about it's not going to do anything. Like, what are we going to do to improve it? And we do that here at the Cardinals, where we have post-season meetings. You're allowed to come with issues, but you've got to come with solutions. You can bring an issue, but what's your 2 or 3 solutions? So that's also a piece of flip. That fierceness is to keep going. Let's take that feeling of wanting something, the Bulls, to win. Oh, that's actually a small part of the country. Let's not do that. I'm not kidding.
Hey, start with your own home. Charity starts at home.
But wanting that feeling of wanting something to work, right? Work. Let's take it across the entire country. Let's work together to make this country work. You got the feeling. You have it when you watch the Bulls or you watch South Africa play rugby. You can absolutely do it for something bigger than that, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, that personal responsibility. That's the truth.
We are responsible.
Yeah. Very good.
Awesome, man. That was absolutely fantastic. So one of the questions we also love to ask at the end is, hopefully next year the boys will go for something that's never been done before in Australia. I think the 2nd or the 3rd of November is the final, and if we can dream and we can say the Boks make it all the way to the final, where do you think you'll be watching that final in Sydney next year?
I was lucky enough to be at the final. This one, it was a last minute thing. I got a ticket, but I would love to be in Sydney for it. But barring that, because I spent a year in Brisbane and I've never been back to Australia, so I think it'd be perfect to go back and show the family, where I was very naughty and drank a few beers too many.
I thought you said studious and disciplined.
No, that was well, not that year. But I would love to go back. But if not, it would absolutely be somewhere here with a bunch of my rugby buddies and families, and my son. right? Just enjoying the game. It would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope to see you in Baltimore.
Philip, I will be there. We got 6 of us. I got 3 amazing stepkids. They're all in college. One of them is in Brighton, actually, in UK.
Okay.
But we'll all be up there, so I'd love to connect and see all you guys.
Yeah, I would love to have a beer with you. The real life Ted Lasso.
Awesome, man. That was a wonderful conversation. Now I can say that I've met a real version of Ted Lasso and spent an hour talking about live rugby and moving abroad. Thank you very much, Jason. That was a wonderful conversation.
Love it. Thank you, gentlemen. That was fantastic.
If you enjoyed that and you want to see more rugby lessons from South Africans abroad and more Ted Lasso moments like that, make sure to follow us on YouTube or your favorite platform. Thanks for joining us.